one of those. It's estimated more than 500,000 households spend so much on rent or mortgage payments they have to go without basic needs like food or healthcare. Housing could be a key issue for this year's election. Australians for Affordable Housing have crunched the numbers to see which electorates are under most pressure. More than half of them are in that traditional election battleground of Western Sydney. Now, our guest tonight is Joel Pringle, who's the campaign manager of Australians for Affordable Housing, and he joins us now, direct down the line from Melbourne. Hi there, Joel. How are you doing?
Very good, Annabelle.
Good, thank you very much for joining us. Now, I'm aware you've just completed this study of census figures looking at exactly where the biggest pressure points are in terms of housing affordability. Can you run us through what you found?
Well, like you say, Western Sydney is overrepresented in those areas. It's not a surprise. This is an area where a lot of families used to go, young families used to go to find affordable house to buy or even just an affordable place to rent. But due to that big demand over years, and there hasn't been enough supply added in that area, there hasn't been the infrastructure to support new housing developments. It's not the case that housing just isn't affordable there. But it's an issue right across the country.
So I noticed that the Financial Review today is reporting this sort of hidden agenda infrastructure in this federal election campaign. Laura Tingle kind of charted a bit of the expenditure promising that was going on more in urban areas than in regional and rural areas. Is that in part a response to this increased pressure?
Look, I'm not sure where that's coming from, but what we know is that well, one of the asks that we're making of the major parties for this election campaign is that the planning for infrastructure is tied more closely to the planning for housing development, and that sort of bring those so that different arms of government aren't working counter to each other, and that would support more affordable housing.
So you think expenditure on housing follows infrastructure in an urban context? Tell me. We're in a really low interest rate environment at the moment. What is that? I mean, is that universally good for people who are wanting to buy a house, or is it a mixed effect depending on where you are?
Well, traditionally we might have thought that, but what we've seen lately, in spite of having the record low interest rates, first home buyers in some places are completely disappearing from the market. For example, in New South Wales, 4% of mortgages taken out at the moment for properties, to purchase a property, are for first home buyers. In Queensland, it's only 6%. So low interest rates aren't helping first home buyers. Low interest rates combined with our current tax settings are encouraging investors to outbid and crowd out first home buyers.
And so what are the ramifications for the rental market in that context?
Well, interest rates themselves don't have a direct impact on the rental market.
I'm just thinking of, you know, investors and so on. Does that have an impact?
What we're concerned about is that the low interest rates might encourage a return to speculative investment, which would drive up prices without necessarily adding to supply. Now, that speculative investment, once it drives up prices, over time rents increase to match those higher prices. So that's of a concern. What we need is to see new construction, and we haven't had that new construction.
Joel, it's a couple of years now since the Rudd government, first time round, announced the big social housing packages that were part of the stimulus response to the global financial crisis. What effect has that tranche of spending had on the problem?
Well, that tranche of spending provided new public and community housing, which was welcome stock for people on low incomes. But it was only a short program. It's not delivered any ongoing investment in new low-income and affordable housing. We need to see more Commonwealth funding tied to new construction of new properties. But another program was developed around that time, the National Rental Affordability Scheme, which is an incentive for private investors to lease out, build new properties and lease them out at a 20% discount to market rents. It's taken a while to get off the ground, as many new programs do, but it's proven to be very popular, very successful. After this fifth and final round that's just closed, there's no guarantee of a future for that program. So I think it sort of begs the question whether there's still a commitment from the government for affordable housing.
Miriam Lyons, I think, has a question for you, John.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if you've got recommendations on, say, limiting negative gearing to new houses, or, you know, shifting the capital gains tax incentive, which is, you know, something that currently is fostering investment to pile in on existing housing and not really increase the supply.
We are very often asked about negative gearing, but really when we have a look at negative gearing, it's a failed program. It's $5 billion per year, around about $5 billion per year, that's supposed to deliver new housing stock. It's supposed to lower rents. What you're seeing there, over 90% of negatively geared properties are existing housing stock. It's not building new housing. It's simply providing more extra capital and more incentive for investors to pile into the existing stock, which increases prices, pushes out first homeowners. Really, as a tax expenditure, we have to ask what other program worth around $5 billion a year would escape the kind of the evaluation of this sort.
Joe, can I ask if you have a view about the rate of population growth and the floor that puts under, you know, the demand for housing, and therefore the problems that you're alluding to? Because I've got to say, I was staggered to see that last year we had immigration of 236,000, a 17% increase on the year before. Total population growth last year of nearly 400,000, all of them needing houses. I mean, I just think for someone like you, this is an issue that's quite pertinent and needs to be raised.
We do have a growing population in Australia, but you know, we're a smart enough country, and we're quite a wealthy country to deliver the infrastructure, and infrastructure also means houses and public transport and schools and hospitals to support a growing population. What we need to get right is those policy settings and the government investment in infrastructure to make sure that we can support that population growth.
Can I float an idea?
Yeah, float away, Miriam. Got 2 minutes.
I was really interested in your article on the cost of abolishing the petrol excise way back, that was costing something like $5 billion a year now. What if we re-indexed the petrol tax to inflation, put that money directly into, you know, like bus transit in, you know, a whole lot of the outer suburbs that were really poorly served by public transport, you know, put it into that kind of infrastructure so that you're actually able to have some kind of urban planning to allow more dense housing along transport lines.
More taxes? I don't know.
I think the question that you might be looking for there is who would re-index petrol excise?
Really popular thing to do. Yeah.
Now that was a very expensive front page of the Daily Telegraph when they put Howard and Costello on the front page as oil sheiks, and several days later the decision was made to cut petrol excise forever. It's kind of a lesson, I think, that one, in just how sweeping the changes that can come from political pressure. I mean, do you think in retrospect, and you've got about 20 seconds, that was a bad move or a good move?
I'm sorry we had to do it. Yeah, I'd been much better. I mean, I think you're actually right in a policy sense. It's better to index the excise rate, but we were being murdered at the time. We had to do something. I'm sorry, you know.
Well,
blame the Telegraph.
Newspapers do still have influence, don't they? That's all for The Drum. Thanks very much to the panel, Nick Minchin, Miriam Lyons and Aaron Patrick, and of course Joel Pringle, who joined us there at the end of the program. You can check out The Drum online at abc.net.au/The Drum. Now, Julia Baird is